I watched every single booktuber who made a Should You Read the Stormlight Archive video to tell you, the people, the scientific, mathematical reasoning behind if you should read the Stormlight Archive. Let's jump into it. Hello everyone, my name is Marsh, and so just to reiterate once more, I watched every single booktuber who made a video on if you should read the Stormlight Archive, and I gathered every single compliment, every single complaint, statistically added them up in a giant Excel sheet, and gave you the mathematical reason if you should read the Stormlight Archive. So sit down, buckle up, and if you end up enjoying this video, consider leaving a like and subscribing, but let's go ahead and get right into it. So the way this video is going to work, I watched a total of 24 different YouTubers, all these beautiful faces on the screen here, and I basically wrote down every single complaint that was mentioned, every single compliment that was mentioned, tallied how many times it was mentioned in each video by each person to make a giant array of pros and cons for the Stormlight Archive. I'm going to give you the numbers, let you know what's going on there. Once more, this isn't necessarily my opinion. This is the compilation of everyone on BookTube that I could find that made a Should You Read Stormlight Archive video. This is not including Should You Read the Cosmere, Should You Read Mistborn. This is only if it said Should You Read the Stormlight Archive. For the format of this video, we're going to start out with what was pointed out just once with one mention. We're going to go from least to greatest in terms of how often something was mentioned, and we'll take it from there. But here's the numbers. So first off, for the pros and compliments towards the series, of the 24 YouTubers that I watched, there was a total of 203 tally marks in the pro section with 31 different compliments. For the negatives, there was a total of 47 tally marks with 19 different complaints. Tallying that up based off the amount of time something was mentioned, we have a positive rating for the Stormlight Archive of 81.2%. Looking at Goodreads to get an example of how this compares, if we calculate the 81.2% into a star rating based off of 5 stars, it would equal 4.06 out of 5 stars. This is pretty similar to the Goodreads. If we look at Goodreads and we take in every single Stormlight Archive book, including the novellas, the total average rating for all of them is 4.55, with the highest being Words of Radiance, which is 4.76, and the lowest being Edge Dancer with 4.23. Also, side note, I saw that there's 50 reviews already on Goodreads for Stormlight 5 that's not even out yet. People, you have a problem. Do not do this. Just kidding at the same time. I love you, Cosmic friends, but don't review books that aren't out, please. That's dumb. Anyways, that's what the total comes out to and how it compares to Goodreads. So it's a pretty similar number for it. My statistics are a little harsher, and some of that is weighed by some people who made a video who probably had more negative opinions versus some that didn't. And it shouldn't be stated. Please, even though I'm including the Excel sheet with everyone's names and videos, do not go to their channel if you do not like their opinion. If you see that they marked a con on the Excel sheet, this is not to call out YouTubers. This is to bring together the community to see what the statistics are. Okay, starting out with one mention, we're going to go through the cons first, then the pros. It is going to start out more con-based. There are less cons in general, so a lot of them only have 1, maybe 2 mentions. So it will be heavy con-based, but we'll get to the good stuff as well. So, for one mention for the cons, the first one is sometimes it's too PG. Some people found that it wasn't adult enough for their taste. I mean, it's all subjective, so that's up to you. Expectations were too high. They said the hype around the series when they went into it was so enormous that it couldn't meet their expectations. Unrealistic characters. They thought that the characters were like caricatures and that they didn't really fit like a realistic character or person. Surface level world building. They thought there was a lot there, but when you dig deeper, you see a lot of problems and holes in the world. Who cares about the interludes? Give me only the story, baby. I don't care about the interludes. Why am I reading about these people that have nothing to do with the main story? Trigger warnings. If you have issues with suicide or mental health issues in general or anything like that, this could be triggering. And the last one for one mention is Venli. I haven't read Rhythm of War yet, so I can't comment on this. Now for the pros. We only had one person mention foreshadowing. Only one time someone mentioned the villains for the prose. Then we have someone mention the graphic audio version of the book was excellent. Another pro was you do not need to be a fantasy fan to read the series. Another one was the humor was great. And the last one is there's a soundtrack to read along to with the books if you like reading the music. So those are all the one mention pros. Let's go ahead and jump to two mentions. For the cons, Sanderson wears his influences on his sleeves. Some people mention Robert Jordan was very heavy-handed in terms of writing style, where they could see how he related to Wheel of Time in that, and if you don't like that, sometimes it's a little too obvious. Another con that was mentioned twice, he doesn't innovate the genre. Another one, world inconsistencies. The next one, suicidal themes. Another con, pacing. And the last con for two mentions, magic play-by-play. By this, they were talking about how when something's going on, there will be these almost video game-like instruction manual moments with the magic where things kind of get paused and interrupted in the prose to explain how the magic works. Not always obvious, but it's there often enough to take you out of the moment. For the prose, we have artwork, plot twists, and character relationships. Specifically, a lot of people mention Bridge 4 with this one. Going to three mentions. For the cons, the third book is not as good as the first two, but it's still okay. His writing style. A lot of people say that his writing style is very plain and basic. The series is not complete yet. A lot of people got PTSD from Game of Thrones and Kingkiller Chronicle from this one. And the last con, a confusing opening to the book. In this case, they're referring to Way of Kings. For the prose, we have the overall tone of the story structure, and theme in the story. All the different themes that are happening throughout the Stormlight archive. Next, we have four mentions. From this point on, the con list is very small, and you'll see it will fully dissipate at some point when we reach a certain amount of mentions. For example, there is no cons that were mentioned 4 times. For the pros, though, we have the pacing. I know this one was shown in the cons, but some people consider his pacing a pro, and so that's why it's also here. On the same note, we have Sanderlanche. Surprisingly, that only came up 4 times. I thought that would be a keyword that would pop up a lot in these videos. Another pro, great audiobooks, came up 4 times. And the last pro with 4 mentions is the diversity in the books, with all the different amount of characters, sexualities, races, species, and everything included. Then we go to 5 mentions, and this is the second to last con. So there's only going to be one more con after this. So the con that was mentioned 5 times was that the first 3/4 of the book is boring. And so this is referring to Way of the Kings once more, since when people are talking about the Stormlight archive, they're talking about the first book usually on if you should read a series. For the pros, it's a very quotable series. After this, we then have a jump to 7 mentions. There's no cons for this section. For the pros, we have action scenes, was mentioned 7 times. For 8 mentions, we only have pros as well. The pros were the curiosity and intrigue and secrets that come up when you're reading the books and make you ask more and more questions. The next one I marked as feelings, exclamation point, exclamation point. This is any time someone says, oh, it really got me in my feels. I was crying, I felt everything, I was so invested. Anytime anyone was saying anything like that, it got marked down with feelings. And the last pro, Sanderson's writing speed. So like there was a con that said the series isn't complete. A lot of people marked it as a pro with Sanderson's writing speed of how they're confident he will complete the series because he writes like a madman. Next, we jump up to 10 mentions, and these are also only pros. The first pro was the Cosmere universe as a whole. People talking about how if you enjoy the Stormlight archive, there's a whole extended universe with Mistborn, Elantris, Warbreaker, and a bunch of other things you can jump into. And the other pro was his digestible prose. So like how some people didn't like his writing style, this is for people who say it's easy to get into his writing style, dive in, eat up the books, and go through them at such a rapid pace it doesn't feel like it's a 1,000-page novel. And then we go to 11 mentions, which also has the last and final con that was mentioned 11 times, the most mentioned con out of all of them when it came to the Stormlight archive. Let me know if you can guess what it is. So for the con, it was the length of the books. It's very intimidating considering the first novel's over 1,000 and they keep getting bigger and bigger as you go along. A lot of people haven't read a 1,000-page book. If you hand them a 1,000-page book, they're going to be confused and worried. From this point on, it's only pros though. So, with 11 mentions for the pros, the first pro we have is the popularity of Sanderson and his fandom. This was mentioned a lot about how popular Sanderson has become. Anytime someone mentioned the Kickstarter, I noted it down in this area. Anytime someone talked about the fan base, just how crazy they are and how amazing they are on BookTube, just joining the fan base and getting in on it was a very big pro for a lot of people and how the community reacted to them. Another pro was how Sanderson writes mental health in his books. As we know, with Kaladin, Shallan, and Dalinar and a lot of his other characters, he does it pretty well. And even one person mentioned how his wife is a psychologist and he talked to her about these things and she confirmed that it was written very well. And the last pro for this section is the story arcs and overall plot. This is whenever anyone mentioned basically how there was arcs that were fulfilling and successful from book to book and overall books, and what if the plot was good with the book. This is what this pro was. Next we have 12 mentions. And so for 12 mentions we have 2 pros. The first one is get on the hype train. This is whenever someone said, you need to read it now before there's adaptations. You need to read it now. It's so popular. It's going to keep blowing up. You just need to get on the Sanderson hype train. This is what this compliment was. The next pro was epic fantasy, exclamation point, exclamation point. This is anytime someone was like, well, it's epic fantasy. If you like it, if you like epic fantasy, you like this. So if you're a fan of epic fantasy, there's at least 12 booktubers that agreed. You should read this. The next one we get is 16 mentions total. The pro for this one is magic system. Anytime someone talked about the magic system in the Stormlight archive, some of them would say how there's 20 magic systems. Some of them would say how each magic system is like a science. He does a good job with hard magic. Anytime it was mentioned where it was a pro with the magic system, that's where I marked it down for this area. The next one is the second most complimented pro when it comes to the Stormlight archive. And that is with 18 mentions, it is world building. Sanderson's worlds, how he builds his environments, the magic systems, everything included, the species, the weather patterns of the world. Anytime this was mentioned, this is where I put it here, one of the biggest pros for his series. And the last and final one, with 19 total mentions out of 24 booktubers, was Sanderson's character work. People really loved his characters. And looking at it, it seems, since it's the most mentioned one, the Stormlight archive is a lot more character focused than people put it out to be. Being epic fantasy, you think it is going to be something where it's a crazy plot, and it's very plot heavy considering the amount of books. But the characters are what really pull you through. So, once more, I'll go over the statistics one more time for you guys just to review. So, like I mentioned before, we had 24 total videos from different booktubers that I watched. There was 203 tally marks for pros, with 31 different individual compliments. And there was 47 tally marks for complaints, with 19 different cons, which brought it out to an overall rating of 81.2% on the should you read scale. This is obviously the most scientific, data-backed, and perfect way to recommend the Stormlight archive. If you want your friends to read the Stormlight archive, you should show them this video so that they know every single complaint and every single pro when it comes to it, and what the numbers show as well. If you ended up enjoying this video though, consider leaving a like and subscribing. What other series should I do the same thing with next? Mistborn, First Law, those are some of the ones I'm looking at. We have Wheel of Time. Let me know in the comments down below what you want me to cover. Other than that though, thank you all for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.